Now, you are a cryptozoologist.
So
and, well, what is cryptozoology?
Well, it sounds lofty, doesn't it? It really isn't. It just means that I have an interest in what they call hidden or unknown animals that are not yet recognized by science. So I've written a couple of books on that topic as well. I co-wrote a book, one of the first ones I ever did, called Monsters of the North Woods back in 1992 with a couple of other authors. And that was about Bigfoot sightings in the Adirondacks and Columbia County and some neighboring areas. And then I wrote a book called Monsters of New York a couple of years ago, which was published by Stackpole. And that's about all kinds of strange things, everything from alligators in the sewers to Bigfoot to Lake Champlain Monster, and you name it.
Now, right now you're working on a book called Rock and Roll Monsters, which is almost done. You want to talk about your upcoming book? Yeah,
that's the latest one I'm writing for Hemlock, my British publisher. And this was something that they asked me to do, and I was only too happy to do it. It's basically a history of another studio, this one an American studio called American International Pictures, which was in business from about 1954 to 1979. And they started out producing very low-budget black and white B science fiction movies. But in the mid-50s, they started also producing rock and roll movies. They were among the first studio to make rock and roll movies. And they managed to get some people like Chuck Berry and a couple
the Alan Freed movies.
Not the Alan Freed movies, but kind of they're very similar to those.
Right.
They had dramatic storylines, but they'd have some rock songs interspersed with the storylines, and they got a few pretty good names to be in them. Then they decided to combine the two, and they started making movies like I Was a Teenage Werewolf, which is one of the great titles of all time, I think, and I Was a Teenage Frankenstein. And hence the title Rock and Roll Monsters, because every one of those teenage monster movies had to have a rock song in there somewhere. It could have been by some no-name guy, but it had to be in there. And those movies are fun to watch, they're fun to write about, and really fun to write about the people behind the scenes who were making these crazy movies. Of course, Roger Corman was the one who's best known now. He started out with American International in the 50s, and he would make 7 or 8 movies a year. And eventually his movies got to be more and more sophisticated. Around 1960, he said to the owners of American International, "Why can't I make one color movie for the price of 2 black and white movies? What about that?" So they said yes, and he made The Fall of the House of Usher, which was a very elegant and stylish color movie with Vincent Price based on a Poe story. So that started a whole series of Poe adaptations that Corman did, which are really highly regarded today. So AIP went in that direction in the 60s, but they also went in the direction of making the Beach Party movies with Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon, which of course are kind of classics of their kind, and really, really fun to watch now because they're like time capsules, and you see all the faces that you've heard about and maybe haven't seen perform, but there they are.
Now, you yourself are starring in a movie called Project Declassified, showing many theaters around New York State, and going to be in drive-ins, and will be available on DVD shortly. And Kathy and I had the honor of attending your movie premiere. What was that like for you, Bruce Hollenbeck, to sit in a theater, and everybody's there because they want to see Bruce Hollenbeck on the big screen? What was that like for you?
I don't know if they were all there to see me or not, but I'll tell you, seeing me was pretty strange for me because, seeing yourself on the big screen, I mean, I've seen myself a few times, but this was a really big screen, and it was widescreen.
Sure.
And it was strange because all I could see was like my ears seemed to be about 3 feet long. My nose seemed to be about 3 feet long. I mean, it was like really strange, but it was a fun experience. I mean, I had a great time there that night, and I'd love to see it at a drive-in.
Well, you were sharing with me when you were going through this process how, with today's technology, you can, with the small digital cameras, you can have effects that 20 or 30 years ago would have required major, large cameras. You want to talk about the change in technology?
Yeah, well, I was really impressed. This was the first time I had seen Project D in any form. And I was really impressed with what the director Joe Bagnardi did with some of the digital effects, the music. I mean, all kinds of things melded together to make a really professional, almost Hollywood style product. And it's true. I mean, these days the technology has gotten to the point where you can have a camera about the size of this coffee mug here and make a movie that's Hollywood quality. I mean, it's incredible. When I was growing up, all I had to work with was 8mm film, then eventually Super 8, then Super 8 sound, and then 16mm. I worked my way up. But nowadays, I mean, it's just so amazing what's out there. Everybody can make a movie.
What is the current state of filmmaking?
In Hollywood, you mean?
Just in general.
Yeah. I'd say it's a very mixed bag. I get kind of frustrated with Hollywood because they keep recycling all the old ideas. Now, just recently, they rebooted, so to speak, the Fantastic Four, another Marvel comic movie, which was filmed about 10 years ago, but they decided to do kind of a new version of it. And it turns out that nobody wanted to see it. It flopped. I mean, big time. The first weekend, it made $26 million, which sounds like a lot, but when your movie cost $150 million, that's not much. I think they're beginning to realize at the studios that they have to start doing something new because Hollywood movies have become these kind of bloated, overproduced, underwritten monstrosities that they're all special effects and very little story. And I think people are getting tired of it. I think they're getting tired of the superhero movies, and they want something fresh.
Tom Cruise has done another, Mission Impossible.
Well, that
we have
very well.
We have another Ghostbusters coming out, which Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd are going to be in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe those will do very well. Mission Impossible certainly did, but. To me, I think the best work right now is being done on television. It's really a golden age of television, I think, especially for cable. When you have shows like Mad Men and Breaking Bad and all those shows that have really broken new ground in TV. I mean, my wife and I binge watch TV all the time now, and that's where the stuff is that's made for grown-ups. I think the movies nowadays, the Hollywood movies are pretty much made for teenagers and younger kids, whereas television is really now for grown-ups, and it's almost like a reverse of the way it was 30 or 40 years ago.
Also, it's more expensive to go to a theater now than it was.
Yeah, sure is. I mean, I made it sound like an old fogey, but I remember when it cost $1 or $2 to get in the theater. Now it's like, what is it, $9? Or if you want to see a 3D movie, it's like $13 or $15. I mean, it's crazy, and movies movie going has certainly dropped off. I mean, there's still a lot of people who love to go to the movies. I love to go to the movies, but because of the prices, I think a lot of people can't afford it.
Well, movie attendance last year hit a 20-year low, and a lot of that is being blamed not only on product, but offered at the theaters, but also just on the cost.
Oh, sure. I mean, when it's that much of an investment, I mean, the movie better be pretty darn good for $15 or so. And frankly, most of them are not that good.
Well, Minions and Inside Out are the two biggest family movies of the year so far. You want to talk about those? Why do you think they're so successful?
Well, I think, people, when they go out, and especially if they're going out to, movies that do cost quite a bit these days, they want to make it an event, and they want to bring the kids. And I think those are movies that, families can go to. And I think that's a great thing. I mean, for a long time, family movies were kind of rare, and now they're the norm. And grown-up movies are kind of the exception. So, I think it's great that they get to do that. Also, Shaun the Sheep, which is, it's a television show in England too, has done great business and gotten terrific reviews. I think it's gotten the best reviews of the year. So all these animated films do very well, almost inevitably. There have been a few that flop, but not many.
In many areas of the country, drive-ins continue to do very well and thrive summer after summer. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, they do. I think drive-ins have made something of a comeback, kind of like vinyl records. I think people get nostalgic for them, and there are a lot of drive-ins in this area that are still going strong. The Jericho, the Hollywood, a number of others. And I think people like that experience of, just sitting there in your car, or maybe these days you can sit outside in a lawn chair and hear it through your radio. It used to be you'd have to sit in your car because they had those speakers you had to put on the window. But now you can, just listen to the soundtrack on your radio and just relax in a lawn chair and enjoy it. It's great.
What impact is Netflix having on theater attendance?
I think it's having a pretty strong impact, and theaters are very nervous about it because Netflix and Amazon and the other companies that are doing made for television, or I'm not even sure what they call it anymore, made for streaming movies, are really cutting into their incomes, and frankly I think they're making better movies. Again, they're doing something that grown-ups can appreciate with really solid acting instead of special effects oriented. Even the superhero stuff they do, which isn't very often. They did a show called Daredevil, Netflix did, and I thought that show was exceptionally good because it was kind of gritty and it wasn't like a big glossy superhero movie. It was much more down to earth, and the acting was good and the writing was good. Vincent D'Onofrio has been nominated for an Emmy for his role in that.
The Law and Order guy, right?
Right. And, they do some outstanding stuff. And that's the kind of stuff that I love to see.
What impact is Netflix having on overall TV audiences?
I think it's almost incalculable because Netflix doesn't do ratings as such. But when you consider how many viewers that television networks have lost in the last few years, I think it's got a pretty strong impact. I don't think it's measurable at this point, but I think in the long run, the networks are going to have to try and make their shows comparable. I think they've already tried to do that. There's a show that my wife and I watched called Hannibal, which actually just got canceled. But NBC was doing this, and it was a pretty strong show for network television. Very graphic in some ways. I think they were really trying to compete with Netflix and Amazon and the cable channels, and NBC got uncomfortable with it, and I think that's why it got canceled. But yeah, I think that's the way of the future. There's going to be a lot of competition between the networks and Netflix.
Well, an astounding statistic came out. I was talking about this before going on the air. Radio this year in the United States, in a Nielsen study which came out a couple of weeks ago, has 245 million listeners a week, eclipsing television as the nation's top reaching medium for people over the age of 12. Blacks and Hispanics listen to radio the most, and the upward trend has been going on for the past 2 years. That's a very interesting statistic.
That is a very interesting statistic, and I hadn't heard that actually. That's fascinating. I mean, I've done a fair amount of radio myself, and I'm glad to hear that because for a long time radio was kind of floundering, and they said it had no future and blah blah blah, and here it is beating out television.
Where do you see entertainment in 10 years as far as television, radio, newspapers, magazines? Where does Bruce Hollenbeck see it in 10 years?
I think it's really all going to kind of morph together into one big
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think television and the internet are coming together. The way most people are receiving movies now is through streaming. I mean, it's actually gone beyond DVD, and a lot of people are just streaming their movies directly from their computers into the television. Not only through Netflix and Amazon, but also Hulu Plus and various other channels. And it seems to me that your television is going to be the center of everything, but it's also going to be your internet, and it's also going to be where you get your news. I mean, just one big screen.
To be continued.
Yep.
Well, Bruce Hollenbeck, actor, writer, movie producer, it's such an honor to have you as our guest today, and good luck with your career, and keep us posted on your next adventure.
Thank you very much, Joe. I will.
I'm Joe Cotton. Have yourself a wonderful day. Look for those Bruce Hollenbeck books or movies.